Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. We've got another video for you today, this time one of our Battle in the Backlog episodes. In this series I have a go at completing 10 games from my substantial backlog on the Nintendo Switch, and then I bring you the games that I've completed, try to give you a rough estimate as to how long they took to complete, and then give you a mini review of sort on my experiences with the game as I made my way through it. We've got a nice mix today of some newer releases, one particularly long game, and a few short experiences too. And please don't forget to put in the comments section of any games that you have finished lately and let us know whether they were worth the time and effort. Right, with all that said then, which games have I finished lately and were they worth it? Well, let's find out. Going in chronological order, the first game off the backlog then was Metroid Dread. I played this one for review and thought it was a fantastic entry in a series that I have very fond memories of. This game took me about 13 hours to beat. My in-game counter said 10 hours, but that doesn't include failed attempts, so I've had to have an educated guess, but for me this was the perfect amount of playtime. I liked the inclusion of the Emmy robots. I'll be honest, after the first couple I did worry the idea would become stale, and some people may well be of this opinion, which is fair enough, but I felt that the encounters with the 7 or so robots were spaced out well enough that this never really happened for me. A good couple of the hours were actually spent trying to defeat the final boss. I don't know what the general consensus is, but I found this much harder than the rest of the game, as it should be I suppose, but I loved my time with this one overall, and as you may have seen, this made my list for our top Switch games of 2021. I'll put a link to that video in a top pinned comment if you want to see it in its entirety. The next game I beat was The Last Door Complete Edition. This is a horror themed point and click game which I got on sale around Halloween time for about £3, down from its usual price of £12, which was an absolute bargain to be fair. It includes both Series 1 and 2, both of which have 4 chapters, and it took me about 18 hours in total to finish all of the content. The plot revolves around a man receiving a letter from an old school friend, a letter that suggests something is not right, and you go to investigate what has happened. This leads to revelations about these characters' younger years and their dealings with otherworldly events. It definitely has a strong Lovecraft vibe, and you get a sense of the Ancient Ones and their cosmic horror theme running through both series. I must also give huge credit to the game for being one of, if not the most logical point and click game I've ever played. Every solution to a problem made sense, there were very few if any leaps of faith, and this is one of my biggest bugbears with the point and click genre. It made this a very pleasant game to play, in terms of the mechanics at least, not the subject matter, and it's definitely worth a look if it does go back on sale. Next was a visual novel called Root Film. It was the premise of this one that really drew me into it, with it being about a young director picked to revive a show that was cancelled 10 years before under suspicious circumstances. However, soon after location scouting begins on the project, people start dying. The story took some interesting turns, and I liked the interaction between characters, something that is essential in a good visual novel for me, and whilst it did take a while to get going, once it hit its stride I was definitely invested in the story and wanted to know how it would all pan out. It had an Ace Attorney type mechanic where the main character would argue with other characters at times, needing to recall previous events or statements to win the argument and push the story forward. If you enjoy visual novels with a mystery element to them, then it is definitely worth getting, and the physical version can be obtained for fairly cheap these days. I think I paid about £21 for mine. I also finished American Fugitive, which is a top-down adventure game very similar to the first 2 Grand Theft Auto games. You play as a man framed for the murder of his father, and after breaking out of prison you take on a number of missions from various people of influence in the town as you look to clear your name. It follows the old formula to the letter in terms of mission structure, stealing cars and navigating the map, and there are also side missions such as races or doing a set amount of damage to receive gold, silver or bronze medals, basically your old rampage missions. There are collectibles to find too, and it does have quite an interesting burglary mechanic where breaking into a house may alert police and you are then given a time limit for when they will arrive. Searching each room of the house takes a set amount of time, and it becomes a risk-reward scenario of getting what you can and getting out before they arrive. On the whole, I really enjoyed this game. There are some slowdown issues and stuttering becomes more prominent towards the end of the game, but I picked the physical version up for about £20 and was more than happy with this price. Plus it goes on sale regularly if you're not bothered about physical editions. At these times you can pick it up for just a couple of pounds, which is an insanely good deal. Another one I completed for review purposes was Transient Extended Edition. This is a first-person walking simulator with a cyberpunk setting and a story that contains ideas and elements from Lovecraftian horror. The main gameplay mechanics revolve around solving puzzles as you explore a variety of locations. There is no combat in the game, and whilst I enjoyed the puzzle solving aspects, I did find they were just a bit too easy. Technically the game was pretty impressive with little to no popping, although there were a few dropped frames, more so in handheld mode, and I enjoyed the world that was built, and I just wish a bit more of it had been shown. The price of £17.99 was too high for the amount of hours it took. I think it was about 5 hours in the end, especially considering the story was a bit muddled. Probably one to wait for a sale on, but check out the review if you want the full story. Links to any relevant videos to the games in this list and the previous episode of this series will be in the top pinned comment. I also finished Bee Simulator, which is an interesting concept if a little flawed in its execution. You play as a worker bee who must go around an open world collecting pollen for the hive, completing missions and partaking in certain minigames revolving around combat and racing. It took about 3 hours to finish, but it was the game I played when bringing my daughter to her swimming lessons, so I was only ever playing it for about 20 minutes at a time, hence the reason it took a little while to complete. I couldn't really recommend it, not because it's a bad game, but just because it's so niche, and it isn't particularly polished either. Plus there is a serious lack of the sense of speed that such a game should offer. If you are intrigued, definitely wait for a sale on this one, but it does at least offer something quite different.
Wow, I have so much pollen. Before I gather more, I have to take this stuff back to the hive.
I picked up the new Disney Collection game that released a few months back solely based on the fact it added Capcom's version of Aladdin for the Super Nintendo. This is one of my favourite games of all time, and I've completed the original game on the Super Nintendo many times over the years. It's the gaming equivalent of comfort food for me, a game that takes only about an hour to finish, and as much as most people seem to prefer the Mega Drive version from Virgin Interactive, this one is definitely my favourite. I actually finished it twice in the first few days of buying it, and I will no doubt play through it again soon. I might tackle the Super Nintendo version of The Jungle Book next, another game I own the original version for, and whilst not as good in my opinion, it will still be fun to play through it again. A big one was chalked off next, and this was Bravely Default 2. This took me 65 hours to finish and I loved every minute of it. I don't get much time to play turn-based RPGs anymore, what with reviews for the channel and family life, but the week's break over Christmas that we took after our 12 Days of SwitchUp series finished gave me the chance to dedicate some time to this one, and it was well worth that time. I've spoken about this one recently, it came second in my Games of the Year list. Again, link to that video is in the top pinned comment, but I am a big fan of the series with its unique Brave and Default combat system, which allows you to take the initiative and have up to 4 goes at once per character, or default and save these moves up. It's the job system though that I really love, which comes via taking the asterisks from the bosses you defeat and the way that you can level up each job, taking certain passive skills and combining a main and sub job, which leads to some incredible combinations in terms of the classes you can build for your characters. I found a system about 2/3 of the way through the game that saw me blitz through the next 5 or 6 bosses before I needed to tweak things for the last couple, as I had a weakness in my team that they definitely exploited. Such a good game though, I love the sense of strategy involved, and job wise my team for the final battle had a Phantom with a Hunter sub job, a Spirit Master with White Mage as sub-job, a Beast Master with Hunter, and finally a Brave Bearer with Beast Master as sub. That combination definitely did the job, end game. The 9th game I finished in this time was Hardcore Mecha, which is a mech shooter most akin to a side-scrolling run and gun in style, where you must take out hordes of enemies as you move through the level, battling a boss at the end. There are secondary missions to attempt on the way, which range from finding a set number of documents scattered about, or helping to defend a building, or party your vehicles with a certain percentage of them needing to stay intact throughout an onslaught. You can pick up extra weapons and money on the way. Successfully completing the aforementioned side quests will also grant you this money, and this can be spent acquiring the new skills and perks on your skill tree, which will open up as you yourself level up through playing. The game itself was good fun with some nice animated cutscenes, but there was a huge amount of stutter, especially in the second half of the game, sometimes to the point where dropped frames of animation would see your character catapulted across the screen as the game caught up with itself. It wasn't game breaking or anything like that, and only really happened sporadically, but it did begin to hamper my enjoyment as I went on. I played this almost exclusively in handheld. I tried a few levels on the big screen to see if it fared any better, but it was pretty much the same, perhaps a bit better, but not by much. It's a shame to not be able to fully recommend this one, as it is a lot of fun, but performance is poor, and if you play predominantly in handheld, then this may give you some food for thought before purchasing if it is one you are interested in. And finally, just last week I completed The Complex. This is an interactive FMV game where you play as Dr. Amy Tennant, who after a bioweapon attack on London finds herself locked in her laboratory with her co-worker with limited time and air to try and get out. There are branching paths depending on decisions you make, and according to the game, 9 possible endings. Your relationship with other characters will change depending on your choices, and I think it took just over an hour, maybe an hour and a half to finish. The ending I got though wasn't a particularly satisfying one, but the options available to me by that point didn't seem to leave me much choice. I'm hoping this is more down to a culmination of all of my choices leading me to that path rather than a case of all of the endings being quite similar, but I enjoyed it enough that perhaps I'll give it another run through at some point to see how differently things can pan out. So there you have it, 10 games finished and chalked off the backlog. I think that's a nice mix of different genres, most certainly a mix of different times it took to complete them, from nice quick one session and done games to ones that took a whole lot longer. Please do let me know what you thought of these games if you have indeed played them, and don't forget to check out the links in the top pinned comment to any of our other videos that are relevant to the games in this episode. Finally, please do stick the games you have finished recently in the comments section. As I said, I love hearing about other games people have finished, how long it took. It gives me a good idea as to what I could potentially play next. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.